We'll move on now. We're going to have a couple of videos of news, first of all from the USA and then from Canada.
Greetings, sisters. It's Carrie from the US. I'll begin by mentioning two WDI USA hosted events that will be taking place this weekend in Seattle to bring attention to the Olympus Spa case, now before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which centers on whether a female-only nude spa in Washington state can exclude men, and for which we submitted an amicus brief earlier this year. The first event is a panel discussion to be held at the Seattle Public Library on Sunday evening at 7 p.m. and will feature Kara Dansky, Amy Sousa, April Morrow, and others speaking out against gender identity ideology and its harmful impacts in the state. For those interested in attending the panel, be sure to purchase your tickets by midnight on November 15th, as we will not be selling tickets at the door. The second event is a rally on the front steps of the William K. Nakamura Courthouse on Monday morning at 10 a.m., directly following oral arguments in the Olympus Spa case. On Wednesday, December 4th at 10 a.m., WDI USA will be in Washington, D.C., as we join a broad coalition of organizations, including LGBT Courage Coalition, Do No Harm, Partners for Ethical Care, LGB Alliance, and other groups opposed to child medicalization, in an action on the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court. This action will take place during oral arguments in the case of United States versus Scrimetti, which centers on the Tennessee ban on the medicalization of minors, and for which we filed an amicus brief in October. For those interested in attending this historic event, please email Jamie Reed at lgbtcouragecoalition@gmail.com. Our aim is to have representation from as many states as possible. This coalition is also seeking lesbians to participate in a video describing why they support laws preventing these medical practices on children. Please email Jamie if you are a lesbian who would like to participate in this video. Finally, the coalition needs funds to cover permits, travel, and accommodation assistance for attendees and to create impactful signs. If you're able to contribute monetarily, please donate via this Give, Send, Go link. Some weeks ago, I mentioned that Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton had filed suit against Dr. Mary Lau, an adolescent medicine physician and associate professor at the UT Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas, alleging she violated the state law banning the medicalization of minors by providing treatments to them in the form of high-dose cross-sex hormones and used false diagnoses and billing codes to mask care. At the time, it was the state's first enforcement action under the new law. He has since filed suit against two other medical practitioners along similar grounds, one in El Paso, pediatric endocrinologist, and the other who also practices at UT Southwestern. I believe that all the suits seek financial penalties, as well as the revocation of the doctor's medical licenses. And finally, as you've likely heard by now, in the national elections held last week, Donald Trump secured his second presidential term by defeating VP Kamala Harris with a decisive win of both the popular and electoral college votes. It was pretty much a clean sweep by Republicans, who flipped the Senate, are on track to retain control over the House of Representatives, and won 8 of 11 gubernatorial races, giving them control of 27 governorships nationwide. What this means for women and girls remains to be seen. Though Trump campaigned aggressively on ending the gender madness, as Kara makes clear in a recent interview with Mr. Meno, there are limits to what the chief executive can accomplish on his own. Some things would require the cooperation of Congress, while other measures that were approved via departmental public policy directives during the Biden administration can only be undone by an approval process that could take years to complete. Still, it is encouraging that this electoral shellacking has already emboldened two House Democrats to take strong public stances in favor of protecting female-only sports. I'd like to hope that trend continues, even as we know that the harms of gender identity go far beyond sports. One thing is certain, as Kristen Z writes in her Substack post, this election was not the finish line. Our work continues, and while a shift in leadership may pave the way, it is up to us to keep women's sex-based rights at the forefront. Thank you. That's all for me today.
This is from Sam in Canada, so it's news from Canada.
Redux reported this week that a trans-identified man who shared sadistic child abuse content and called for transitioning of minors will serve a shortened sentence in a women's jail. This man, who calls himself Christelle Lozon, but who was known as Danny Lozon as recently as 2020, is a repeat child sex offender. Lozon has been found to be active in pedophile communities and was arrested on child pornography charges after he was found to have filmed a 10-year-old girl in the shower and then distributed the content among pedophile forums. He was also caught with hundreds of files depicting child pornography. The judge overseeing Lozon's case highlighted that the sexual predator had advocated favorably for pedophilia to be considered a sexual orientation, stating, "He made very disturbing statements suggesting that his attraction to children wasn't an illness, but rather simply a sexual orientation." The judge continued that the particularly odious nature of the files involved young girls who were abused and forced to submit to acts of bestiality. However, the judge agreed with defense attorney Stephanie Gariffi with that conditions of Lozon's detainment were extremely difficult, as he had been placed in a women's jail but is often kept in isolation away from female prisoners. "Madame is a trans woman," he said. "The conditions of detention are unique. He is often excluded from the prison population." This is evidently a reason in this judge's eyes to let him go early instead of putting him where he belongs, in a men's prison. Adam LeBoucan, who I talked about last week and who goes by Tara D'Souza now, is in the news again. Redux reported today that LeBoucan attacked a female, and LeBoucan did not face any consequences for this attack. It was vaguely mentioned at a parole hearing in 2018, and the parole board cited LeBoucan's Indigenous heritage as a mitigating factor. The board found that you have experienced negative intergenerational effects as a result and acknowledged the linkage between your involvement in the criminal justice system and a number of elements in social and family history, including your substance abuse issues. Angela said that part of the reason she decided to come forward was due to another incident she'd witnessed in which a different trans-identified man, known as Coco Tallulah, beat a female inmate so horrifically she suffered a miscarriage. The assault occurred in 2020, and Tallulah was transferred back to a men's prison in 2021. Angela stated, "The violence that happens to women from these men in jail is ridiculous. The Correctional Service of Canada doesn't do anything to stop it and blames the women as aggressors in almost every situation." Finishing off with some good news from Canada, Ontario teacher Carolyn Brzezinski will be able to proceed with her defamation suit against the Waterloo Regional District School Board. In January of 2022, Brzezinski made a presentation at the WRDSB. She expressed her concern regarding the content of diversity materials in elementary school libraries, which promote transition as cool and without consequence. The chair of the board at the time, Scott Pietkowski, cut off Brzezinski's presentation and removed her from the meeting. She was subsequently assigned to home pending a formal investigation, banned from contacting her colleagues and students, and accused of transphobia and of violating the Ontario Human Rights Code. Brzezinski brought a defamation lawsuit against the school board and Scott Pietkowski, which they tried to have thrown out of court. An Ontario judge originally dismissed an attempt by the board to use an anti-SLAPP motion, which is a motion to have a case dismissed at the very, very early stages, to dismiss the case, but the board then appealed this decision. This week, the Ontario Court of Appeal dismissed the Waterloo Regional District School Board's case. Carolyn Brajowski is now free to pursue her defamation suit against the board and Scott Pietkowski at the Ontario Superior Court. The court noted a discrepancy between Brajowski's words and how they were subsequently characterized by Pietkowski. It also outlined that the WRDSB's decision to remove the video of Brajowski's presentation from its website while Pietkowski still commented publicly about it prevented members of the public from forming their own assessment. And that's all I have today. Thank you.